Good morning on this Thursday. What's this? Is this last Thursday of January? So what is it? Tomorrow's payday for most people, right? So this week is certainly payday for people. That's correct, right? So this is the proper end. This is the end of January and the beginning of January. Oh, well, almost the beginning of February. But January is almost over. I think that's something worth celebrating, don't you think?
It's the beginning of the year.
Phumi Mashiko's here and Bulelo Tinta, and it is a Thursday, which means, among other things, the burning platform a little bit later on. Kuyashisa. All right. Well, a couple of comments that are already rolling in. Lovely Lady Lee says, "Good morning, all. I can't believe I'm sacrificing my sleep for this show." Tell me about it.
How are you possibly still sleeping at this hour?
You are one of those people, I guess, that just doesn't like to lie around in bed for too long, right, Pums?
Dude, it's 6 o'clock and the sun is like almost all the way up.
What's your point?
This is, for me, this is the most exciting thing about summer, though, is that the sun is actually up at this time. You have more day, more day to get things done, more day.
Love it. Seamus is shitting on us. He says, like and subscribe, for fuck's sake. I can't believe that the subscriptions are increasing faster. Well, yeah, it's a funny thing. Like, maybe because I'm not holding a gun to everyone's head every morning, but if you don't like and subscribe and all the YouTubers tell me that's all you have to keep reminding people to do, then we do not grow, then we do not do more, then we do not, fit into the YouTube algorithm the way that other shows do, and people won't take us seriously. It'll be a disaster. So get on it, please. Get.
Where's the button? Like and subscribe.
Oh, do you want the like and subscribe button? Here we go, Pums. All right. Do a professional one for us quickly. Go for it.
Hey, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Just smash the like and subscribe button.
That's the one.
Button. Oh, yeah.
There we go. There we go. Correct. Thank you, Pums.
That's it.
There we go. See, if we don't do that reminder, then I get into trouble. So there we go. Good stuff. So, Pums, what's happening with you?
Everything is happening. Everything is happening. But did you see? Because I sent Dory yesterday. This again with the sleeping in, right? People and the sleeping in. I'm astounded at the number of people who don't want to go back to the office. I read this article the other day about most South Africans don't want to go back to the office. It's like, why, guys? I wanted, my house must be my house, must be my hangout, relaxation, Well, and then when I was at the hair salon, I got the answer because there was a woman there who was talking on the phone about her side hustle and how she's started a business baking cakes. Baking cakes in buckets for misebenzi and all of that stuff is a big business in the Black community. Sure. So she started that side hustle. She started that side hustle during the lockdown, and she's just like, I just turn off the camera and then check on my scones, and I was just like, hey, laziness, is that what's happening? People are busy doing other things here.
Absolutely. Listen,
and I wondered how many other people are doing other things during work hours, pretending to be fully in the meeting.
I think maybe there are some people who've really benefited from this in a big way, and the other people who just have hated every part of it. And I'm kind of half and half still. I mean, there's some things I should be very grateful for lockdown, to lockdown for. First one of those being, I've always wanted to do this show from home because it never made sense to me to have to get in a car, drive for, 25 to 35 minutes in the morning, sometimes get stuck in traffic. There was always something. We were always worried about one of the guests arriving late or any of that stuff. So being able to do this online, like people listen online, makes sense. And I don't think we've dropped our standards. I don't think that we've made the shows any less interesting. We've certainly tried to get guests that hit and punch at a very high level. And we can do really great shows from anywhere. We should be able to. Means that I can take this show on the road. I can do it like I did last week from Cape Town or internationally once that opens up. And I think that gives us enormous possibility and potential to do new things, right? Whereas if we're stuck in the studio, there's only so much you can ever do.
I get that, but it's also just so much fun and so much more interactive to be with each other. So we can do this, and it's great to be able to get guests from everywhere, because that's what the digital thing has done, right? Is you can get any guest from anywhere, and they can. And when it was like the hard lockdowns, everybody was available, so that was amazing. But it's also, there's something in the tangibleness of being with each other.
Sure, I still do that. I mean, we still go into the office, but for the show, this is kind of the way that we've got to work now, and it suits me down to the ground, the show. But the rest of it, yes, absolutely, it's still important to meet face to face with people. It's still important to see everybody eye to eye. I get that, and you can't really replace that with anything. I don't care what Zoom does, or any of these brilliant platforms that we now just consider the normal way to meet. For example, Tuesday, there was a meeting that was scheduled, and Lebang and Rena and I thought it was in the office, but it was actually an online meeting. So the three of us were sitting in the office together, and two people who were meeting on the other side were online. And it doesn't make a difference to me. It's not like the most important thing, but I do love a face-to-face meeting now, which I used to hate. I used to hate those meetings. I'm not a meeting kind of guy. Put me in a meeting for anything longer than 15 minutes, and I want to slit my wrists.
I get that, but also people are up to shit. I think we must accept that there are a lot of people that are up to nonsense. Somebody sent a message earlier saying, first you start out with like connection issues at the beginning, and then you get to turn off your camera, and then you can do whatever.
Right.
As you graduate.
I'm sure there are people out there. I'm sure there are people out there kind of like hanging out in their bed.
Oh, for sure.
The meeting.
No, you can tell. And also you can see people have a lot of people, we said this couple of months into lockdown, people have just let themselves go as well. They don't people used to dress up. They used to, not everybody, but there's a contingent of people who used to make an effort. Like you put on the nice outfit for work, you'd have your hair done, you'd put on some makeup if you're one of the girls, you'd have some nice earrings on, all that stuff. Now, I mean, I've got to wear headphones. I'm not going to bother with earrings. I don't need makeup because I'll just turn the light down a little bit more. I'll use that soft focus on some of these things that you get. And, people they're kind of like, well, I don't need to be there in person. Let it go.
Look, I have had days coming on the show, especially in winter, in those deep winter days, where I've really struggled with should I really get out of my onesie?
Mm-hmm.
I've had those days.
Yep. Yeah. You have to force yourself.
But because of Mulelo and his judginess,
Yeah.
I always get out of the onesie.
I am judgy. I realized this yesterday again as well. It's like, oh my goodness, South Africans terrible at queuing as well. As much as I'm glad we're back in the mix, you don't need to. My rule is, so I'm 179 centimeters tall. That's my wingspan. If I can touch you, you're too close. So if I do a full circle, you're too close in the queue. Forget the social distancing. You were too close before this.
So do you hold your hands out? Do you like?
Sometimes I'll just have, if I've got like, if I've got an umbrella, for instance, I'll put it behind me, but like in a weird way that creates umbrella length distance. And if it hits you, I don't apologize. You're too close. Move back. So just these little things, like let's get better queuing.
I mean, traffic is back for sure, whether you like it or not. The roads are back to being busy. At certain times of the day now, you suddenly go, oh, hell, okay, I forgot that this is happening. And you know what? I mean, Mash says it's been a great change during lockdown. Got you guys on video now as well, so that's been great. I can promise you now, we would never. I was so against video. I would never.
Really?
Yeah, I hated the idea of video. I always thought that a show like ours needs imagination space, and audio works best with you using your imagination, not having to look at us or for us to create visuals. And although we don't throw visuals up on the screen all the time because that would make the podcast audience very irritated. There are still occasions like, we had a story about, all these people who've died in the last while, and I was putting pictures of them up while we were talking about them. And that's helpful for the viewing audience because it reminds, oh, that's who they're talking about. But it's not that great if you're listening because you still have to look it up yourself. Not the end of the world, because I used to do that anyway with radio. There'd be some story on the radio and I'd go, oh, I don't know who that actor or that actress is, or I don't know who they're talking about here. And then I'd have to Google them quickly while the show was on. But it's still an audio show. And if we hadn't gone online, I would never have said yes to video, ever. We'd still be doing this show as an audio-only show. So that's happened, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely a good thing.
Robin says, Mbulelo, take up your space. I do the same. I will step backwards if someone edges closer. And Carl says, this too close thing is only relevant if the person is unattractive. If there's an attractive girl in the queue, she can always get a little closer. Not too close, because I am married, but you know what I mean. No. Oh, right.
I like the end of that. Not too close.
That's excellent. That is so true, though. Listen, I mean, I've said this a million times. Attractive people, just all the rules change when someone is beautiful. All the rules.
Yeah, 100%. And that will not change.
No, it's just part of what we've got to get used to. There are privileges, the real privilege in this world. There are three of them that have nothing to do with money, right? They've got all to do with pure luck. The first one is attractive privilege. Beautiful people always get privilege. Pretty privilege. That is absolutely a thing. It is, and if you look at it from my side of the world, where all the ugly people live, and you look into the pretty people bubble, you see like, oh God, that must be so nice. Imagine that. Just everybody talks to you in a different way. They forgive you your mistakes. They want to be around you more. Everybody loves pretty people. So there's pretty people privilege. Then there's what I call family privilege. That is, if you're lucky enough to have grown up in a loving family with or without both parents, but with a whole lot of love and support and protection and safety and all of those things, because we take it for granted if you have that. But if you don't have it, there's very little that can make up for it, right? And that's a real privilege that many people don't entirely understand. And the third one is like this, there's a street smart privilege. There's this like nous that some people have. They can just walk into a situation and figure it out very quickly. And it doesn't have to do with intelligence, the kind that Mbulelo and I talk about when we're measuring IQ or sciences or the ability to figure out something complex in terms of mathematics or logic or any of that stuff. This is a street smartness. Like someone will walk into a room and go, that guy over there is dangerous. Or they'll walk into a place and go, those are the exits if I need to get out of here in a hurry. Or I know how to make this place work. I know how to make
I have a friend like that. I have a friend like that. He is incredible. Like if you're in trouble and you get stopped by the police and you know you were wrong but you've done something wrong. He is the kind of guy that you can pick up your phone and call and say three things to him. Say, listen, I just got stopped here by the police and doctor, I just wanted you to explain to them why I have to be like speeding. Yes. And hand the phone over to the police and he will wing it. He'll get you out of trouble.
Oh, man.
Just that guy. He is just that guy. He can get you out of any trouble. Yeah. You don't even have to give him a long time to figure it out.
That's awesome.
It is his superpower. It is his superpower. He can get you in and out of parties. He can get you sort all you out.
All the rules
up with all of the people. Yeah. You can't get into Conga. He's the guy.
Am I right? Those are the three kinds of privilege that people don't usually pick up on. Because everybody looks at it, they go money, they go resources, they go age, because obviously there's a youth privilege and then there's an old age privilege on the other side.
I'd never thought about that family privilege.
I think family privilege, especially in our country, you can see it. Like some people They think everybody's as lucky as they are to have a loving, happy place to come from, where there are so many people in South Africa who don't have that. And it doesn't matter whether you're black or white or old or young or rich or poor. If you grew up in a household where, let's say, your parents were filthy rich, but they never gave you any love, and they were always fighting, and they didn't give you the support that you needed as a small child. You see a kid who's grown up with that support, and you compare them to a kid who might have had everything else but none of that. Massive difference. Massive difference.
Stable is king. But a friend of mine who belongs to the super good looking club, right? I've always said to her, and she always says,
"Oh my goodness,
oh, you're such a bigot, right? You're such a bigot." I'm like, the most powerful people in the world are good looking girls, and you can do too much. And she never listens to me. I say, don't do too much. You already look like this. Just let it happen to you. But she wants to get in the mix too much. I just said, look like you look and be alive. You've already won the human Olympics.
Oh, yeah.
But some people don't know what they've got going. You know what I mean?
The lotto
she does
of
way
looks.
Too much.
The lotto of looks. I'm telling you, those balls.
What does that even mean? What do you
What? You don't know what he's talking about? I know what he's talking about. It makes perfect sense to me.
I have no idea what doing too much when you're pretty.
Right, explain this to Phumi. I know what she means.
So
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So what good-looking girls don't realize is that the world is gonna happen to you however you want to eventually, especially when there's guys around. Is that don't press. Like she goes into social situations and she thinks she needs to sort of initiate things and be the star of the show. You're already the star of the show. You look like this. And then now, because the problem that she doesn't realize is eventually we're all human. Don't talk too much. You're going to be boring, or you're not going to be smart. Just let the world happen to you, and you're already in the World Cup final. But some people don't know what they've got, you know? Sometimes I wish I could record her and let her see some social settings, and then she'd realize what I'm saying. But people don't listen. When you're good looking, you've already won. Don't do too much. It's possible to do too much.
You can sometimes make up for the deficit in good looks, which is what I've spent
by being funny.
Yeah, I've spent my entire life trying to make up for that deficit by, doing a job that gets me more attention, by making people laugh some of the time, by reading more, by making sure that I'm working on that other stuff all the time so I can up the ante. Because some people walk into a room. I mean, I had this one girlfriend. I swear to you, she had no idea. She was completely, she was ignorant as F about when she walked into a room and everybody turned around and looked at her. She was like, in the movies or in those, especially those sort of American teen movies where you have the high
slow
school
motion.
Yeah. And this one girl walks in, and then the wind machine starts blowing in her hand. Like she stands in, the lighting is perfect, and everybody stops what they're doing, and everyone in the frame goes as she walks in. And then there's this stop in the music, for example, and like it's dramatic. That's what happened to her. She wasn't aware of it. She's like, "What are you talking about?" Because she'd had that her whole life. Every time she walked into a room, it happened. So eventually she just took it for granted. She's like, okay. Didn't know her own power.
Sister.
I mean, some people have a different kind of animal magnetism, and you can see it with, certain politicians, people who just have that enormous drive, that real energy that just accompanies them into a room. They've got power. They walk in and people stop, not because they're pretty in that case, but because they just have massive, massive energy around them.
Francois Pienaar.
They own the room. Yeah, Francois Pienaar.
It happened to me. I felt it.
I've never met him. He's one of them.
Yeah,
I remember.
No, magic. He comes in, boom, handshake, eyes. He looks like he looks, and he's
but
in
he's
it, and
huge.
But he's also got that thing. You know, he carries himself in that way. It's like, oh, I see why they got Matt Damon to play you now. Well, when I met him, I was like, oh.
So do you
like
think
this?
He's a jock. He's definitely a jock. He's like exactly those teen American movies. He's like that guy.
He's like the high school. Yeah,
he is totally that guy. Jock, and because he's bigger than everyone, his body presence also does that.
Okay, but do you think that is something that people can learn? Because you might not have the look, you might not have it. Do you think it's something people
No.
can learn to
No.
do?
Now,
No.
I've told you this before. You know, organizations pick captains and CEOs and whatever. The people pick the leaders. So I know this from boarding school. I think I've told you this before.
Yeah.
The coaches can pick whoever they want for the captain of the team. When we're on the try line and it's 5 meters out, it's raining and it's like we 1 point up. We used to tell the captain, get out the way. That's the guy we're listening to. Whatever you say, we're doing it. And there's nothing that you can do to that guy. To that guy. You can't. Yeah, there's no master's program. There's no leadership. When you're that guy, you're that guy. I don't know how it works for ladies, but certainly from I guess a narrow boarding school perspective and through life, you can't.
Maybe
you're born with it or you're not.
Yeah,
you're
maybe
not
it's like maybe it's an instinct and an animal energy type thing, an animal magnetism thing, because you do see it with animals. You know, there's the one lion or buffalo or whatever it might be who just you could see they're in charge. As a human, we're not even in that herd or in that pride. We can look at it and go, that's the big Makulu boss. And all of them are looking at him and listening to him. He might not be the biggest one there, but there's something about the display of power. And you do see that with humans, particularly if you study history, you can see that this person just had like an outsized effect on the people around them. They would be able to get them to do whatever they wanted them to do.
Like Napoleon, he was so short. He shouldn't have been able to do what he could.
No, and Napoleon.
But he was still...
Right. And don't tell me that people like the bad guys like Stalin and Hitler, don't tell me they were good looking. They were not. Don't tell me they were perfect specimens of humanity. I mean, they kept on talking about how they were superior and came from a superior race in Hitler's case, right? He didn't look like anything superior. If Hitler walked into a room, you wouldn't by looks think, oh, there's a real leader. You'd think, what a little runt.
Yeah,
but
the cult of personality.
Yeah, it's a power thing. I mean, there are examples of that. Obviously, here in South Africa, you know, Nelson
Which
Mandela
is what,
presence.
but even which is what Jay-Z, but it's also what Jacob had that Cyril doesn't.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, it's unbelievable that even at the height of everyone is clear that this guy is terrible for all of us, but he still had that thing that people would still...
100% right. Phumi, every single time I met him, and I met Jacob Zuma, 6 or 7 times, right, in different scenarios. A few of them were when he wasn't president, and when he was out of favor and he was in the political wilderness. And a lot of people thought, what a waste of time to sit and meet this guy. And I met the first time I met him actually was when he was out there and nobody really cared. My God, what a charming man. I've often said this, just the ability to make everyone, especially, and I know this is not a politically correct thing to say, but especially I saw his influence on women. And there were women literally swooning around this guy. And I've always wondered why it is that some men are able to get women to do that. He definitely had that power at that stage, certainly. Maybe not so much
and
anymore.
It's not even, and it's again, it's not good looks.
No, not in his case. No,
it's not like bodily whatever. He doesn't have the body for it. He doesn't have, but there's just...
All right, so if you can't learn it, then that's another privilege. Then we've got to call that like inherent power or innate power or something like that. That, you know, it just manifests itself and you can own a room without even trying.
Shadi Perelwood, is that how you say that? Says Terre Blanche had a huge presence.
Oh my God, Terre Blanche. Yeah, well, I mean, listen, you remember what that guy was? I mean, he was as right wing could be, right? Right. There's a lot of right in that sense.
Right.
But he was, and I don't remember him very well because I was very young when he was on the political scene. You know, it was around 1990 to 1994, and then he started to fade into obscurity. But you remember the Avia beer was like a thing once. It's completely dissolved. I don't know that there's anyone who would call themselves Avia beer now with their hand on their heart.
Yeah, well, now they're just Buramach, isn't it?
Yeah, but who are they without a guy like him? You know, he certainly, whether you like him or not, and that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of the bad guys in history are also these people, and you can either use that power that you have, that charisma, as Joe calls it. You can either use that for good or for bad. And the Mexicans call it machismo, yes, but only when referring to men. The women can also have that power.
Oh yeah. And in fact, it actually probably works when they've got it. Oh yeah. Yeah. Because with guys, it's almost, the problem is guys go too much into that ego way, from what I remember. And it's what separates that guy from a pseudo that guy, where they want to impose it physically. Like when a lady's got it, I'm doing it. I'll see you guys on the finish line, and you don't have to be on the train, by the way. Whoever's on, great. It was excellent. And those who follow me win. It's a very interesting thing.
Well, Kim Jong-un says, we always like to hear from him because, you know, he's busy in North Korea.
He knows these things. And he knows these things.
He says it's got a lot to do with perception. Perception is reality. Hence, the people we meet on social media are completely different in person most of the time. Oh, I'm not going to go down that road because yesterday, Phumi, we started the show with Simpiwe and Bulelo and I. We started talking about the metaverse and buying NFTs and owning like places in the metaverse rather than the real world. And we went down a rabbit hole. My God. Unbelievable. Really, really unbelievable. We went to places. I actually had the weirdest dreams last night about like buying. No, it's so weird. I had this dream last night that I was buying a bunch of like bullshit, like memes and GIFs and things.
Purple rabbits.
Yeah, and I didn't know why I'd bought them. And then I sat with this bunch of stuff, and I was hoping in the dream. I was like sitting there in the dream going, please be worth something because I've spent money on you.
And your dreams are so practical. What I always find I always find it, because people's dreams, especially yours, sound quite lucid. People's dreams are usually like, oh, there was a monster, it turned pink. But yours are always like a practical, well, I wonder if I can afford it in the end. It always ends up there. And I'm like, that's not a dream. You can do that in real life.
No, I know, but I
you can have financial problems in 3D.
Yes. No, they're very realistic. They're completely tied to the human experience on Earth, without a doubt. But I do have weird dreams as well, and those usually occur if I have the time to have an afternoon nap or whatever. Those daydreams, it's almost like I've taken drugs. Really, I have the most incredible, like hallucinogenic, vivid, insane, crazy, fantastical dreams when I have a daydream, a sleep during the day. As you're going into that sleep and as you're coming out of it, and you can go back in and out. My God, it's like I feel like how I imagine someone who's constantly on mushrooms feels.
I read an article about the person who invented the sewing machine, that they dreamt about it.
Really?
Oh, wow.
That they dreamt about it, and then when they woke up, they were like, oh,
that's what I need to do.
Machine.
Wow.
Yeah, well, musicians, a lot of the great musicians who've written those unbelievable melodies that you can just, anyone in the world can hum with just 3 bars, or not even like 3 or 4 notes, they can pick up the rest of the song. A lot of those guys say that those melodies come to them in a dream, and they'll wake up and they'll have to have a notepad next to them or a voice recorder or whatever. And thank God these days we've got these, right? Because you can just hit record on there and they can go da 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 da, da or whatever, record it. Because you remember in the old days, like you would have had to get a tape recorder and would have been connected to this and had this big machine. But now you can just record it on your phone. But the thing came to them in a dream.
Wow!
Imagine.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Kim Jong-un says, we have everything we need over here in North Korea. Great food, great government, and most importantly, a great leader. Yes, and North Korea is best Korea. Never forget. That's
only Korea, true Korea.
Yeah,
that's it.
You know that thing about dreaming stuff up and kind of, Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah,
she has a book called Big Magic, and it's about the life of ideas. And her hypothesis is that all ideas are everywhere all the time, looking for a way to actualize. And if you get an idea and you don't bring it to life, the idea just moves on to somebody who does. And so one of the reasons some people will say, I had a dream and it just came to me, or when I wrote this thing, it was a stream of consciousness, is because the idea has a life of its own.
Big magic.
And it's just looking for a way to self-actualize.
That's an interesting idea. That ideas are bouncing around all around. No, it's an amazing thing to think about. Like you could access any of the great ideas and the ones that we haven't even discovered yet, right? You could find any of those things. It could just
you just have to be a conduit. Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's you have to be attuned to it. So people who are creators of any kind, whether it's writers or musicians or dancers, are more in tune into the world of ideas, and so they are able to kind of be the conduit for it.
I love that.
Hell of a thing. I think there's also it's a book, Big Magic. Sorry, it's called Big Magic, and I think she has a TED Talk about it as well.
Okay, I'll look it up. That sounds amazing. All right, so that's Elizabeth Gilbert, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on, I've got a picture of the book here. Take a look. This is the book that Phumi's talking about, and that sounds like a good one to add to the reading list. Elizabeth Gilbert. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love.
That's the one.
Called Big Magic: Creative Living Beyond Fear. Well, it's interesting that she even brings fear into it, because you can't have good ideas if you're fearful, because fearful means you're in survival mode. If you're in survival mode, all you're thinking about is, when is my next meal coming? How do I keep myself safe? How do I not lose my house or my money or my children or whatever it might be, right?
But it's also the fear of ridicule is what she talks about. So some of the things that stops the ideas, that stops you from kind of living through the idea, is you're kind of like, yeah, what if people think it's stupid? And that thing is fear. What if people don't like it? That thing is fear, What if they don't like me for saying this? Fear.
Well, listen, I'm going to read this book. You've given me something to think about now. Damn it, Phumi, more homework. I've got so much homework. I've got 3 books sitting on my bedside table that I've got to make a way through in the next.
Yeah, that's why you shouldn't be sleeping past 6 a.m.
Oh my God, yeah.
There it is. Come full circle.
Yeah. No, that's true. All right, so a couple of headlines for this morning. This is so disturbing. And there's so much of this going on because China really owns Hollywood at the moment. And if you want to make a movie or a TV series, or if you're in sport, for example, and you want to sell to the biggest market of potential viewers in the world, you have to be friends with China. But they control how things go. So they actually took the movie Fight Club. Remember, with Brad Pitt, right? The original ending of Fight Club is where Edward Norton's character, or the narrator, kills his imaginary alter ego, Tyler Durden, before bombs destroy buildings in the climax, to a subversive plot to reorder society, right? It's called Project Mayhem. So in the movie, that's what happens. But in China, a message now says that the police foiled the plot, arrested the criminals, and sent Tyler Durden to a lunatic asylum. So
lunatic asylum, of course.
So China has actually forced everybody to a different ending to the movie, so that the authorities win. This is sick. This is George Orwell, 1984, totalitarianism writ large, and now it's happening in Hollywood. And you know what? I have no respect for Hollywood if they allow this to happen. The new finale tells viewers, through the clue provided by Tyler, the police rapidly figured out the whole plan and arrested all the criminals, successfully preventing the bomb from exploding. So, nice one, China. That's great. Apparently, the director has recently been added to the streaming platform Tencent Video, and Human Rights Watch described the changes as dystopian. Tell me about it. Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote the 1996 novel that it was adapted from, wrote sarcastically on Twitter, "This is super wonderful. Everyone gets a happy ending in China." So,
sure. Is that a happy ending, though? Is that a happy ending?
Yeah,
although
quite satisfying to see the bombs go off.
Correct.
It is quite. Yeah, it is quite super overrated film, but okay, conversation for another time. What's it? The other idea of that Hollywood has ever been free is crazy. So I interviewed somebody whose mom's super royalty there. And I don't know if people know this, but the American military has to clear every single film that comes out of Hollywood. So this idea, and I mean, listen, we are more free. I think the West is still the best place to live. But the idea that it's ever been like, we're free and we're watching a liberal Hollywood is not true anyway. The American military is in control of whatever we're seeing.
Listen, there's some things China is doing that you might not think are so bad, and you might think some of them are more than okay. They're like they should be mandatory. For example, there's a tightening of rules over what China has described as unhealthy content in programs. I mean, the Western world, everybody's going crazy on TikTok. Guess what? You can't access from China if you're under the age of 25. TikTok. There are no Chinese users. They don't allow it. They don't even allow their kids
and they've got a time period that kids can be on devices.
Correct. So part of the tightening of rules is the National Radio and Television Administration in China said political and moral conduct should be seen as criteria that need to be prioritized in the selection of actors. So certain talent show formats have been stopped. The television regulator also ordered broadcasters to rein in high salaries paid to stars and to clamp down on tax evaders. They also promoted what they defined as more masculine images of men, and they criticized male celebrities who use makeup or look effeminate. So you might think that's good, you might think it's bad.
Wow.
They want to foster a patriotic atmosphere, and they're going to encourage that kind of stuff. They've reinstated the commitment to common prosperity, and in this pledge, to redistribute wealth, high-earning tech tycoons and entertainment stars should be singled out. Last week, Chinese actress Zheng Shuang was fined $46 million for tax evasion. $46 million.
Jeez.
Yeah. So there we go. And they do not like...
And they've been on a string of those, hey? They've been on a string of those. She's not the first.
They're cleansing video games. They are taking effeminate men and women off of there. They don't mind if women are pretty and stupid, but they don't want men to be pretty. So there's pretty privilege is gone for them, just in case you were worrying and wondering about that.
Tate Diggs wouldn't last. He wouldn't last.
All right. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has been hospitalized. I saw this in the news yesterday. Don't know a whole lot about it, but I can give you some background. Of course, he's a very old man now. So, let's not all pretend that he was going to last forever, but that's a whole generation that's just on their way out now. And we're the poorer for it. We had Desmond Tutu in, that week of Christmas. But he has been hospitalized, and they say it's nothing to be alarmed about. I mean, he's in incredible condition. The family confirmed that he was hospitalized on Tuesday, but says that he's undergoing a routine medical examination, and he reported feeling slightly ill on Monday. There were concerns about his blood pressure, and they said they will probably discharge him later this week from hospital.
Because over the weekend, I think over the weekend he was Esandlwana. There was a commemoration.
Yes, that's right.
He was there. He had a little speech, and then so yesterday when I saw him trending, does this happen to anyone else? Like when you see somebody's name trending and they're a certain age, that you kind of feel like
you immediately think, okay, it's bad news.
This morning when I woke up and Barry Manilow, somebody else was trending, and I was like,
end of them. It was, how I knew it was the commemoration of the Battle of Sandlwana. I follow Prince, well, now he's our King Misuzulu on Instagram, and then I don't know if it's him or if it's Office.
I think it's a fake. I think it's a fake account because there's also one on Twitter. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're posting stuff where he is all the time, so it's interesting because you get like an insight into what the king is up to. And I saw all the people in their traditional garb at the copy at Isandlwana, which I recognized immediately. It was really cool. So I see that going on. But Mangosuthu in hospital, but they say don't panic. He will be probably released in the next 2 days.
I actually have somebody to introduce to you. I didn't think about this until right this minute. Her name is Shalom Bata, and she wrote the book, like the definitive history of, and in Sizulu, and it's got an English. It's called Umlando Nobuqhawe bukaZulu. So it's about the kind of the dynasty of how it's all come down. So
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
yeah,
right up my street.
I actually I just and
Get
her
her. Let's talk.
the foreword in her book was actually written by the late king.
King Goodwill.
Mm.
Oh, wow. Oof, I'd like to hear that. That sounds good. That's I just love that stuff. Apparently, cabinets are to announce an end to rotational classes at schools. So that's coming up in the news. Very good news for parents.
Thank goodness.
Right. You were complaining. You were saying that there's still schools that have this bizarre system and you couldn't believe it the other day. Remember?
Ridiculous.
Save your 20,000 Rand. Drake is not performing at Konka, despite what anyone tells you. That's an important
What?
Tickets would have cost you 20 Rand. Yeah. So, despite the excitement on social media, Konka and Soweto have dismissed rumors that Drake will be performing live at their venue in March. Comes after an initial post on a fake Facebook page, which posted that they were hosting the event of the year, bringing Drake to perform in Mzansi on March 10th. And the fees were going to be 20,000 Rand a person and 30,000.
They would never be 20,000. They would never be 20,000 at Konka. They'd at least 50. At least 50.
Sure.
Also, why would Drake be going to Konka? I mean, what are we doing?
Well, stranger things
Come on,
have
guys.
happened.
Come on.
Anyway, so don't waste your money. It's not going to happen. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What
Presumably his friend Black Coffee would get him to anyway.
So the actual Konka in Soweto said a scam alert, fake news, Mara one day is one.
Mara one day.
Oh, okay. One day is one day. Okay.
That's what they said.
Incredible.
So that's what's going on. All right. That's all we've got time for in the headlines this morning. We've got lots of other good stuff, though, heading your way in the next while. Got an email or two that we want to get to. This one's from Tessa. I've also got the Burning Platform with Sihle Ngobese. And we've got JJ Cornish on this morning. So lots to talk about. I also interviewed a professor at Wits just yesterday, Professor Gilbert Khadigala, who is he's the head of an organization at Wits that looks into the relationship between America and Africa, and in particular America and South Africa. And I had a nice conversation with him for about 45 minutes yesterday, and we'll be putting that out later this week as well. So stick around for that and a whole lot more. Does anybody know? Boza wants to know, what's the latest on Jub Jub and Amanda? Anything? Or has that just died out?
New cycle. The new cycle has happened to them. That's the thing about these things. It's just like outrage for all of 8 hours. And then
it makes me wonder how much of it is real. Because if it is as serious as it was on the day that it broke as a news story, how can it just go away like that? No, really. It's unbelievable.
Because it takes a lot to follow through on things like that, right? It takes a lot to follow through with a court case. It takes a lot to follow through with suing a person. It takes a lot of time and energy and money.
Money. That's also it. What I love about TikTok is, Robin, TikTok is it's the only platform where you're required to be creative to make videos and receive the good content. Well, I must be honest with you, I'm not on TikTok. I've never even, when people send me TikTok links, it takes me to like a registration or a login page, so I just give up there and then I don't go in.
No, although I must say, South
African sends me the file, then if you send me the file on WhatsApp, for example, then I get it. But otherwise, I'm so old school. I don't even know how to access this stuff.
Listen, the level of some of the stuff that I've seen from TikTok, and I've deliberately stayed away from having my own account on TikTok. Yeah. Because I can see the rabbit hole, like your metaverse situation. I can see it. The stuff that I see of South African content creators, whether it's singing and dancing, whether it's kind of imitating people. Yeah. But my God, the original content in the vernaculars that is just incisive and funny and incredible performances, incredible little skits, little acting. is unbelievable. South Africans are amazing. South Africans have an amazing sense of humor. South Africans are incredibly like, and the kind of humor that they have as well is just out of this world. I wish we could bottle it and sell it to the rest of the world.
Well, the Chinese are bottling and selling it back to us. That's the irony. I mean, that's why they're clever, right? But I think it's great. Let people find a way to tell their stories, to do their thing, to show their talent off. I think it's terrific.
And I hope they can monetize it.
Apparently, TikTok is now bigger than Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and even Google. So there's an interesting thing. And obviously, it's young people too. So we're not talking about like 60, 70, and 80-year-olds who are busy making this content. It's coming from, 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
Yeah. But interestingly, so in South Africa, the numbers are, the biggest consumers are between 25 and 40, by the way, that age demographic on TikTok, which is quite interesting. So yeah, creators between 15 and 21, and then consumers are between 25 and 40 is the largest consumer base in South Africa. I haven't seen any other numbers.
Well, Robin says she's deleted Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and WhatsApp. But how can you delete WhatsApp? I need to know how you've done that, because I don't have WhatsApp. First of all, this morning on the show, I had to send Simpiwe and Bolelo a WhatsApp before we started the show. I wouldn't be able to do that on any other app, could I? I don't want to send them individual like SMSs. And I don't want to be on Signal or Telegram or any of those. That's a pain in the ass. So WhatsApp's just where people are. Why would you not have that? How do you manage without that, Robin? That's ridiculous. So
yeah, maybe Robin is the princess, like Philip's cousin or something, and she can just live that life. You know what I'm saying? Because when you're that rich,
people who need her just send her a text.
Yeah. In fact, they bring a scroll. They light the beacons as they're on their way.
They bring her a letter with a wax seal on it on a silver tray, and they walk in. They knock at the door, walk into the room. Madam, there is a message for you.
Exactly.
And then she picks it up and opens it up with a letter opener. Do you remember when we used to have those?
Yes.
I still have a
my father's
magnificent letter opener.
Yeah, really?
I have a beautiful.
Yeah, my father had one as well. Do you have one of those proper ones? Yeah.
Yeah. Stick it. Oh yeah.
It's a nice thing to use. Yeah. You don't tear the envelope up.
Yeah. That's what I imagine now.
You talk about letters and things. So I share a post box with the rest of the family and my dad's business, and it all goes to the same post box. But he never collects the mail. So like he went the other day, and on Monday I popped in at their house, and there's this pile of like letters for me. Obviously, most of them are bills, from the municipality and that kind of thing. I was in big trouble because the last time I think I got mail from them was probably June last year. So I had to very quickly pay up, and it wasn't a small amount of money. But mail, like having a post box, it feels so antiquated, doesn't it?
Do you still have a post? Wait, I thought you were telling a story from a while ago. Like, do you have a post box now? So you go with the little gray key and you open?
Yes.
But do you know mail can be delivered to your house? Did you know that?
What, by the post office?
You can just, no, yeah, or you can just, they just drop it into your gate.
Really?
Yeah. What?
No.
When was the last time you saw a postman? In the
90s.
When was the last time you saw it? And that mail and coming to your house. When was the last time you saw a postman like with his little satchel and his black and white cat?
and two people so sophisticated like you two are. Is that next you're going to tell me? Yeah, Postman Pat. Next thing you're going to tell me you're still listening to CDs or what? I mean, come on.
Listen, if you have a serious people with businesses and real bills that you actually need to get to,
thank you,
have to ensure that their mail actually arrives on time, because believe it or not, there are so many other people who are still sending mail like that, as in a real actual paper printed in an envelope. And
Listen,
somebody closed it.
If I hadn't got those letters,
get a post box. You'll never get it. Postman.
There would be real world consequences for me. I would have been cut off by the municipality if I hadn't got those bills in the mail. They don't send them to me on email.
Hi.
Sorry.
So I'm not joking. I am stunned that you just said a post box. Like totally stunned. Like I don't even know the last time I saw a post box, and I'm not being funny. I don't know the last time I saw one.
This is
so
funny.
Freedom Fighter here actually has a postman in his
in Blairgowrie
neighborhood.
Postman Patlala on his bicycle still. Listen, that's
which can also be shortened to Postman Pat. But anyway.
Okay.
Postman Pat and his black and white cat. Do you remember that? I remember the song that you Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat and his black and white cat. But we had a different version. It was Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat drove over his cat. All the guts went flying. Postman Pat was crying. He'll just have to buy another cat.
You awful, awful people. Awful, awful children.
Yeah. All right. That's enough about these antiquated ways that Phumi and I communicate. And Bolelo is horrified. He's horrified. Look at him. He's shaking his head at this. Sharon says, we have a postman in Melkbosstrand. Yeah, I'm telling you.
CJ.
Yeah. Sean says, post boxes are everywhere.
Where's everywhere? I also live here.
Nah, please. I don't know what fancy place you're in the year 2048, but we're still stuck with like postmen on bicycles.
Yes,
sorry.
In your fancy little like apartment block that doesn't allow kids and pets.
Yeah, it is a pleasure. It is a pleasure. 2 more months and the guy's going back to India.
Oh, your neighbor who was irritating you.
Yeah,
good.
2 more months. He's leaving in May. It's just outstanding.
Tiger DC says you can get your municipal bill by email or online. I haven't had a postbox in 10 years. All right, stop making us feel bad. Stop it. Cassandra says a friend sent me a Christmas card from the UK for Christmas 2020. She received it back in the UK a week before Christmas 2021. Oh, wow. It took a year for it to get here and then be sent back. Can you believe it? All right. Well, I still have a postbox. I'm not embarrassed about it. Sorry.
Yeah. Wow.
The post office, listen to this, Chris says, post office in Pinelands couldn't afford a bicycle for the postman, so we all got together and bought him a bike collectively. How's that?
Incredible.
That's
amazing.
Nice. Postman Pat was lit. London is exactly like that. Postman actually arrives and says, hello, darling. A Royal Mail. Huh?
Weirdly, it's still quite big in the UK and America. Still, like the postal service is a massive part of the society. Which
and they get their newspapers delivered every morning.
Yeah,
usually by the same guy. All right, well, that's all we got time for in this hour. But coming up, the Burning Platform. I'm very excited for a new edition of the Burning Platform. I've still got Tessa's email, but we may get to that tomorrow. We'll have to see. This morning on the Burning Platform, we'll be joined by JJ Cornish, who is our expert on all things African, and we haven't spoken to him yet in 2022. So we'll find out what he has on the agenda for the next couple of weeks, and also get his take on some of the hot stories in current affairs at the moment. Also, Big Daddy Sihle Ngobese, who is the host of the Big Daddy Liberty Show, which you can get on podcast or watch on YouTube. But this morning, he's here with us. So make sure you don't miss that. That's coming up next between 7 and 8 on cliffcentral.com. Stick around for that and a whole lot more. And welcome to Thursday.
The world's apex predators have fearsome reputations, so it's hard to believe that some of them are facing a fight for survival.
In Gansbaai and Valsbaai, white sharks are almost completely disappeared.
Blind Conservation is the story of these endangered predators. In our first episodes, we speak to global experts about the alarming plight of the great white shark.
Each shark that lives out there, one day out of 4 days, it can be killed.
And what you can do to help one of nature's most magnificent creatures survive for future generations. Join me, Spike Ballantyne, and my co-host, Anthony Mederer, for Blind Conservation, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
put it like wow. This that sound. These oaks don't work hard like me. I hope they know by now.
Yes, you are on cliffcentral.com on a Thursday morning. It is time for the Burning Platform, which comes to you at this time every week. And we get into some of the big stories in the news. We talk a little bit about what's going on here in South Africa, what's going on in the international world, what you need to think about, what you need to know about, what you need to perhaps worry about, and what you really don't have to worry about, hopefully, too. Pum's just being, before we start the Burning Platform, getting into all this nostalgia around postboxes and things. One of the comments someone left here is about their bank. Reisebek says, our banks have done away with checks. When last did you get a check?
Oh, no, I don't know. I actually
Yes.
still, I don't remember. I don't remember. I may have still been, I don't think in my business I have. I think it was like when I was at film school. When I was at film school, I used to do stuff with Student Wise, right? So I used to like do all of these promotions and all of that crazy stuff. And then on Fridays, it was amazing, the Student Wise thing, because then if you've done like work during this week, next week Friday, you can go to the Student Wise reception and pick up your check.
Oh, wow. Remember, people used to get their salaries by check.
Pick up your check, and then that apps are there by Auckland Park, because Student Wise is in Auckland Park, and the apps are there by Auckland Park. It's packed with students coming to cash their checks on the Friday.
Unbelievable. Do you remember when? I mean,
but I do have a checkbook. I do have a checkbook for the business.
I think I've got one somewhere.
Because there are still people who, when you are applying to be a supplier or on their database or whatever, still want a cancelled check as a proof of bank details. You know that you can get a letter. There are still some archaic systems out there mining.
Mining.
Yeah, it's mining. Who else? Who will ask for a cancelled check as a proof of bank? So that's why I had a checkbook.
Well, there we go. I mean, I think I've got a checkbook somewhere, but don't ask me where it is. It's probably I've never used it. I don't think. Oh, the last time I used a check was also when I was a student. I don't think people use those anymore. These days, it's kind of even if people use EFTs, you think, but you could probably do a geo payment if you're close to me, whatever.
Yes.
Now I use Apple Pay at the shops. It's great. I love this.
I still haven't. So after all of that, even Lebang's stories of getting
fraud
scammed, I must say I'm a little reluctant with that Apple Pay.
I love it.
I'm a little like, it's the getting scammed for me.
Are you joking? Double click, then it does a little face scan. Then I paid for dinner last night with Apple Pay. It was amazing. It's fantastic. I love it. All right, let's get into the Burning Platform for this morning. As I mentioned, Sihle Big Daddy Ngobese is our guest, as well as JJ Cornish. Let's welcome JJ to the show. He's here already. Hello, JJ Cornish. How are you, sir?
Bonjour. I'm very well indeed. Bonne année to both of you.
Thank
Hello.
you. Yes.
I'll write you. I was going to write you a Christmas check on my Bank of Disneyland checkbook. Is that? Would you accept it?
Come on. You must
I'll
remember,
accept it and frame it.
You must remember those days of checks and having to use these archaic means of getting money from
I do. I can remember that imperious, and the bigger the company, the more likely they were to actually, as Phumi said, make you go round to collect your check. You do a speaking gig for BMW, you'd have to drive around 4 days later to pick up your check. I mean, it's really quite strange, very colonial, huh?
Oh. But come to the master to get your pay in a little brown envelope.
Yes, come along, yeah.
Well, luckily we have moved on. We haven't really moved on in some other ways, and some of the stories in the news make me think we're still stuck in the 90s, especially when you look at places, JJ, like Mozambique, which is, right next door to us. Mozambique in many ways is a sad story, because the people of that country have had this interminable list of just unending challenge, deprivation, poverty. The government have run the place into the ground. And it used to be, once upon a time, one of those places with enormous promise. It was sexy. I mean, we spoke to Dan Moyane the other day, who used to live in Maputo. He went there during the struggle. He was in exile. He met his wife there. He worked in radio there. And he told me these stories about what a sexy place it used to be. You know, like there was just stuff going on all the time. It was almost like a bit, in my mind, I imagine a bit like Cuba in the 1960s, where people were doing these amazing and interesting things. And before we get Sihle on the show, I think, you know, let's give you the spotlight for as long as we possibly can. What's happening in Mozambique? Every time I hear stories, it's just bad news. It's terrorists. It's, you know, the poorest country in Africa, those kinds of stories.
Well, you know, that I was the first Mlungu journalist, South African journalist, allowed back into Mozambique after the revolution. 1976, conference in support of the peoples of Zimbabwe, Namibia, and they said Azania at the time. I remember it was just a fantastic. I went as a UN correspondent, and quite amazing. You know, being vegetarian now for 50 years, it was fewer years at that point, but I lived on the odd omelette, some salads, and cashew nuts for the 2 weeks I was there. Quite amazing country. And I've been back several times. You know, I went back, having returned to South Africa in the mid-'80s, I went back there. It was before the Nkomati Accord. And first time I ever went to Mozambique, incidentally, I was 9 years old on a school camp. It's when I started smoking those little cheroots. It ruined me. But yeah, so then I went back. I remember the marketplace. I can remember it as a kid. It was sort of 4 blocks in size. The marketplace then, mid-'80s, had one table which had some lemons on it. That is the state of it. I had to go to Mozambique. I had to take my own food because the hotels didn't have food. It really was in a desperate state. A guy I met there, American accented man, turned out to be the coach for the Mozambique national basketball team. I was training for comrades at the time, so we used to go running every day from the hotel, and we'd run out about 3 Ks, and there would be a soldier. You can go no further. The next day we'd run out. It was 2.5 Ks. Same soldier. Can go no further. The next day it would be 2 Ks. You can't go any further. You know, and Renamo was moving in on the capital. So having gone back now several times, certainly after Nkomati, which was quite a remarkable piece of diplomacy by South Africa at the time, I'm glad to see Mozambique getting better. Certainly Maputo getting better and better. But what has happened up in Cabo Delgado, it's this enormously long country, you know, goes all the way up. And that Cabo Delgado, that is where the problem is. It would have turned this basket case country, really was the poorest country on the planet at one point, into something of a regional power with the gas, the liquid petroleum gas that was being taken out or going to be exploited by Total Energy and you know, the French company. Now, they've pulled out because of the jihadis taking over. Now that's all about estrangement and you know, feeling marginalized and then links with the jihadis that caused them to do terrible things like walking into villages and beheading people and so on.
I remember.
Well, that now the SADC peacekeeping force that's come in, and they had their mandate renewed at the SADC summit earlier this month. With Rwanda also helping out. We wondered why, but now we see that the Rwandan operation there, very interesting. The head of Total is going to, Patrick Puyan, is going to Rwanda, and the $20 million a month that they're spending getting stability or trying to bring stability to Mozambique, Total is going to repay them, I think, by helping electricity generation in Rwanda. I don't know what Total will do for the rest of, or for the SADC countries are also paying an inordinate amount of money and not getting anything like a commensurate amount of security there. So it's not a pleasant story what is happening in Cabo Delgado. But the United Nations wants to set up a peacekeeping force, but that's being resisted in the United Nations. They're saying, you're spending so much on Africa already. Why would you spend more in Mozambique, where we're not even sure of getting any kind of result? So it's a depressing state of affairs. And to add to that depression, the rainy season that we're living in now, they've already had 8 people dead from the rains. Every year at this time, the South African
monsoon
army helicopters have to fly over and pull people out of trees and things like that. That's going to happen yet again. So, a sad, heartbreaking story for us on our eastern neighbor.
Well, what about this story I'm hearing about bald men being the target of a whole lot of superstitious criminals and their clients? What's this all about? Why are they going after bald men, JJ? This is very strange.
They beheaded a bald man, and they had a Malian candidate or client for this bald head. The client disappeared, so the beheaders, the killers, in other words, just dispensed of the head in a village. And it turns out that people in Mozambique, in that part of Mozambique, believe that bald men have gold in their heads. And we can laugh at that kind of misapprehension. I just want you to see that I'm not quite bald, so I don't have gold in my head. But it's that same terrible, terrible situation with people selling in Africa, particularly selling body parts that they believe bring good luck or prowess in lovemaking or that sort of thing. It's the same situation that faces people suffering albinism in Tanzania and countries. It's really, really, really something that needs to be rooted out. But bald men have gold in their heads. So whenever I walk up to somebody and pat them on the head or give them a kiss on the pate, it's because I'm hoping to get something 14 karat a little later on, maybe. Huh?
Oh, wow. JJ, you've got gold of a different kind in your head.
Phumi, you say the nicest things.
But it is a big business. I mean, body parts, even in countries as sophisticated as Nigeria, it is a very big business because there's lots of people who have lots of varying different belief systems that require such.
I don't know what body part they would get of mine that's of any value. Although, I suppose for the sort of wrinkly artwork might be interesting, if you could put it up somewhere. But otherwise, I'd advise the body snatchers to leave me alone.
Bald men's heads are filled with gold. I've never heard in all the history of the Burning Platform, and in fact, in all the history of this show and every other show I've ever done, that bald men's heads are filled with gold. And that's just fantastic.
I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times, invite me on more often.
Look at what we learn. JJ, we do pay very little attention, and perhaps they deserve to have as little attention paid to them as we give them, to the AU. But is that whole party still going? I mean, when Nkosazana was there, we paid a little bit more attention to it. Now she's back in, the National Coronavirus Command Council. For a little while, she had her time in the spotlight, but now it appears she's disappeared even from that. What are we doing in the AU? What's going on with the AU at the moment? Does anyone care? And when is the next summit, etc., etc.?
Summit's coming up right now, and that summit is in Addis Ababa. That's the headquarters of the AU in Addis Ababa, where
Ethiopia's a mess at the moment, right?
Absolutely, thanks to Abiy Ahmed, the so-called Nobel Peace Prize laureate, who turns on the Tigrayan people. I mean, the Tigrayan people are so interesting. They're not the majority group, the Amhara are, but the fact is that they had a disproportionate amount of political power. And so as they got sort of marginalized by Abiy Ahmed, they turned and rebelled. And it was on November the 4th last year that they began their war. And it's something that is of great, great concern. And the way the Ethiopians have responded to it and the repression they have used, I have to say that Tigrayans not entirely blameless in what they've been doing. But one would have thought that they'd move the African Union summit somewhere else, just to sort of show displeasure with what Abiy Ahmed is doing, but they're having it. And that summit is going to talk about the unfair treatment of Africans, certainly in the COVID pandemic. You know, the fact that, well, at the moment, you know, that the vaccination rate for COVID, against COVID in Africa, 7%. 7%.
And yet,
Antonio Guterres. Sorry,
we're doing okay. I mean, and yet, despite that very low vaccination rate, Africa, which was predicted to be a real shit show when it came to people getting coronavirus and dying from it, you know, because our hospitals aren't prepared as well, and we don't have the resources of many first world countries, and obviously we have this immunocompromised population. Turns out we didn't get hit as hard as everybody expected. That's the
not
truth.
at all. And, you know, we were sitting with, you know, on tenterhooks waiting for it to happen. And certainly I don't want to see Africans not being vaccinated. Antonio Guterres said, you know, compare that to my country, which is hardly a wealthy country. We are 90% vaccinated, that being Portugal, you know. But you make the point there that the Africans, you know, the first wave, second wave, third wave, what do we do now, fifth wave, and Africans still haven't shown the figures. Now, do we believe that Omicron is the last of the variants that hit us? I certainly don't. And I think I know as much or can pronounce as loudly on that as any politician, and sadly now as any doctor, because, you know, the doctors have been reduced to the sort of ranks of politicians, and that you can't believe a word they say. They're prepared to lie or make things up. So anyway,
are they also going to talk about, so I mean, I understand that they want to talk about the unfair treatment of Africa and Africans as a whole, and we saw it, I mean, with the closing down of borders and closing down flights and not allowing people in and out of African countries and redlining and all of that kind of stuff. But they're also going to talk about the unfair treatment of Africans by African leaders. Because
well, that was my second point. You took the words right out of my mouth, as Meatloaf used to say. You know, 8 countries, and South Africa being one of them, were blacklisted for a while or locked down by fellow Africans. So you can bet that Cyril Ramaphosa is going to have something to say about that. It's all Southern African countries, and the countries that you know, hit us. Well, when you see somebody like Egypt, Morocco, that wasn't that surprising, you know. But the fact is, there was the so-called African solidarity didn't make its way, make itself known at that point. You know, the African Union, I remember the Organization of African Unity as a young journalist trying desperately to get to cover those conferences, never allowed in. And then when the African Union came, 2002, it changed the face of multilateral politics in Africa, rightly so, you know.
As I recall, it was largely Thabo Mbeki and Obasanjo of Nigeria who forwarded that change from the OAU to the AU, right?
Well, Muammar Gaddafi would have said it's him. People, you said, oh, okay, Muammar, yeah. They used to do that.
The brother leader.
The brother leader, yeah. He, what an interesting man. I interviewed him. You know, he used to speak, I think I told you this, he used to speak in a very quiet voice like this. So everybody had to lean in and listen to him. Strange guy. Very strange guy. When I looked at him for the first time, I realized Muammar Gaddafi wore his sunglasses on the inside of his eyes, you know. Very strange individual. And there we had 2002, we had the African Union that was supposed to no longer be this coterie, this club of African leaders who never bad-mouthed one another. This was where they would never let another Rwanda happen. They would never let another genocide occur. When human rights violations or war crimes were committed, then they would speak out against one another. And
then we watch them watch Zimbabwe and Sudan.
Well, to some extent, you know, and that is what the African Union is doing, for example, against coups in West Africa, which have increased exponentially. They're getting back to the stage. You remember when Africa was the kind of coup country? Then everything descended or ascended into some order. It's descending in West Africa now into a situation where we've had these coups, and the African Union, it's not even on their agenda, or doesn't seem to be high on their agenda. They're talking about climate change. Very interestingly, we're the victims in climate change, the smallest polluters, but the greatest victims. But we want, as Africans, not only to not be victims, but we want to make a positive impact on fighting climate change. So that will be an interesting one. And financing of the African Union, you know, the many African countries that don't even pay their dues.
Yeah,
and so, you know, with a lot of the financing we're expecting from abroad, and when you get somebody to pick up the check from a...
Isn't it always those countries that don't pay their dues that are the loudest and have the most to say?
Absolutely. Well, that certainly is the case. So it will be an interesting summit. But I certainly wouldn't go along, travel to Ethiopia at this point.
No, JJ,
and get into a COVID comet and go and take my chances there. I don't think so.
No, but also, I mean, there are very few flights that are going via Ethiopia. In fact, it's disrupted because Ethiopian Airlines is one of the better airlines in Africa, and they're constantly winning awards. Many people fly with them. But you can't do that now because you're going to go into a war zone. You mentioned West Africa, and I heard Naledi Pandor, who's our Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. She had some statement to make about Burkina Faso this week. What's happening in there? What's the update on that?
Well, there was a coup on Monday. Now we have Marc Roch Kabore, and he came to power in 2015. And in 2014, they overthrew the Blaise Compaoré. Now, a former member of Compaoré's guard, Paul-Henri Damiba, he has taken over. Damiba is a sort of publicity-shy individual. He hasn't given an interview, hasn't addressed the nation. We don't know where Compaoré is at this time, which is rather sad. The United States, which pays 2/3 of Burkina Faso's military budget, they're saying, what on earth is happening? Of course, the African Union has condemned it. ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, has excluded the country for the time being. They've red-carded them. The fact is, though, this is following coups in Sudan, in Guinea, in Mali, in Chad. But those West African countries, Guinea, Mali, Chad, with Burkina Faso, it's a parlous state of affairs. And sadly, the people, the reason why there was a coup was the soldiers believed that Compaoré was not doing enough to fight the jihadis. Now, there is that jihadi onslaught across the whole of the Sahel, that piece of land between North Africa and the Sahara Desert. Now, that group of countries all suffering very bad Islamist attacks. And they believe Compaoré wasn't taking it seriously enough. So when you go into the streets of Burkina Faso at the moment, people are saying, well, it wasn't a coup. The army had to do it. And the army obviously loving that fact, where they, just as they do in Mali, where they said they'd deposed the guy who died, Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, died last week, sadly. But they replaced him, said they would have elections within a short space of time. Now they're saying 5 years. And the region is saying, hey, that's not good enough. You've got to be quicker than that. We wait to see what Damiba is going to do about restoring them. He's got an organization called the Patriotic Movement for Safeguarding and Restoration. So if you can get a decent T-shirt slogan, you can run a country. And he's proving that at this point. We wait to see what's happening.
And with absolutely no interference from the African Union.
Well, the African Union has a policy of red carding countries that have unconstitutional changes of government. And, Egypt, for example, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, he suffered this when he threw out the Mohamed Morsi. I observed those elections in which Morsi, after the fall of the former president, was elected, actually duly elected. but Abdel Fattah al-Sisi overthrew him. But they're back in power now, and who's taken power, and he's a very, very hard-line president. The United States, at one point, the United States aid to Egypt was greater than its aid to Africa, the rest of Africa combined. It's a key ally in the Middle East, which is, of course, a key place for the Americans. And they've now got a big arms deal with Egypt, $2.5 billion arms deal that they haven't yet signed. And the human rights activists within the Joe Biden administration are saying, don't do it, you can't. And they're already holding back money from last year's arms that they were supposed to apply to give to Egypt, saying, prove that your human rights. They've got 60,000 political prisoners in Egypt at this time.
Wow. That's a lot of people. So, JJ, I do want us to move back to South Africa. I know we've been waiting for Sihle, and Piwe is trying to get hold of Sihle and Gobese, but we must move on. The Burning Platform often, for people, just gives a little snapshot of what's happening in South Africa, but we've spent a good few minutes looking at Africa, which is obviously your area of specialization. I just want to ask both you and Phumi a couple of opinions on some of the big stories. First of all, Business Tech came out with an interesting story about which jobs are disappearing in South Africa. So we've lost a net loss of 600,000 jobs between 2019 and now. That's an enormous amount, especially in a country where we can't afford more people to go into unemployment. So 600,000 jobs, by the way, that's not as a result of COVID, but it's as a result of lockdowns. So there's a very important distinction there. It includes, among others, jobs like travel attendants, restaurant service workers, shop salespeople, demonstrators. It's understandable these jobs have declined over the past 2 years, given how the lockdowns have impacted retail and hospitality. That's according to PricewaterhouseCoopers. Stats South Africa shows that inflation-adjusted restaurant sales were nearly 25% below pre-pandemic levels. I would have thought it would be more. But here are the jobs that we've lost, and some of them are semi-skilled, some of them are skilled. So the domestic workers, we've lost 15.5% of our domestic workers since lockdowns came into operation. Sales and services minus 21.5%. Craft and related trade down 20%. Plant and machine operators down 11.3%. Skilled agriculture down 20%. Then in the semi-skilled category, technicians, managers, and professionals all down some 18% if you put them together. And the skilled total in South Africa has dropped by 7.6%. So most of the jobs we've lost are in the unskilled and semi-skilled areas. How do we get these back? And what are your opinions, Phumi and JJ, on that story? I think it's quite worrying.
JJ, you go first.
Well, and we're not even here talking about the jobs lost because of technology in my industry. I mean, newspapers, for example, there used to be, the works operation in the newspaper was massive, outnumbered the journalists or by sort of a factor of 4 or 3, and they've all disappeared now. So that, and I've just seen that in my own industry. The fact is, those jobs will or should begin to come back, and if you see the kind of more hard-nosed free-ranging economists, they would say, well, if a restaurant goes now, if there was a call for it, when the economy starts to come back, there will be another restaurant. Somebody else will come up with an idea, and the indefatigable ability of mankind to find gaps and to seek out new opportunities will make its way known. So we might find we get better restaurants, better entertainment, better leisure facilities. Well, one hopes that is the case and that they will take up some of those semi-skilled and skilled jobs. But for the time being, those people, and certainly in the more sophisticated or the wealthier countries, they can be compensated and kept alive. But in our country, where social services are really, really, really hard strained, not to say preyed upon by corrupt officials, We don't have that ability. If I've had to let somebody go in my position, I've had to let them go because I simply don't have the money to pay them. There's nothing more I can do. And then I've got to use that money to try and survive. Then in turn, I get turned upon, what happens? What is our unemployment? It exceeds 40%. It really is astronomical, unacceptably high by any standards. So, I don't have anything except a belief in the capacity of man and in basic economics to eventually find a way. But there will be enormous suffering before then. I have no doubt of that.
Absolutely already happening. What are your feelings?
No, I think that one of the things that we all suffering from in South Africa is also just a baseline thinking. So when you hear this report and it says over the past 2 years, the first thought that comes to our head is it's as a result of the lockdowns or what happened during COVID. But actually, we've been on this trajectory for a very long time. If you look at the kind of skills that are also being talked about and the kind of skills that are being that are being lost, it is also a function of our economy. Our economy, guys, has not been growing. Our economy for a very long time was static, and now it has been declining. There's talk of, we just had interest rate hikes. There's talk of more hikes because of our inflation targeting, and it's because of our economics as a country. Our policy is such that it doesn't give much of an opportunity. So if people lose their jobs, of course they're going to let go of their domestic worker. And of course, they're not going to be spending at restaurants as much. So then the restaurant business is also going to be going down. And that's what we have. So it's easy to say it's because of a result of the lockdowns, but actually it's because of our economy as a whole. And it's going to be like this for a long time because of the way that our economic policy and our government doesn't have ideas of how to stimulate growth in the economy and how to turn things around there. And so the pain is going to be with us for a while still.
I went on a rant on Monday morning because Cyril was on after having his NEC meeting, and he was talking about, he's still got these like 1970s, Soviet Russian ideas of central planning and how if we can just forge a new, he calls it a social compact, and he went on about this for hours and hours at the NEC meeting. Apparently, they were all gathered together to figure out a new way to plan the economy better. I mean, these are people who've mismanaged every possible part of the economy into the ground. We're a country, JJ, you spoke earlier about climate change. We're a country that just can't afford to even have those conversations. We're so dependent on the energy we don't have and that we can only get at this point from coal that it's a pipe dream for us to even be involved in discussions around climate change. We have so much to still do. And the people who are meant to be doing it are the ones least equipped to be able to handle it. They're implementing and talking through ideas that are 50, 60 years old and have been proven to do nothing but drive an economy into the ground. So, Phumi, when the president talks about a social compact and a way to involve even small businesses, and he says, spaza shops and township businesses and communities, involve them in a government discussion, that's not going to help business. That's going to retard business. The best thing they can do at this point is probably get out of the way, don't you think?
That's my view. We can't afford more tax. We can't afford, and they're talking about, I think they were also talking about the fact that even the VAT might be increased because of the tax base having shrunk so much.
Well, we got a budget coming up, right?
All that's going to do, but all that does is it restrains further. So the people who do have money don't spend the money as much. And it's just, it's a fuck up.
Well, it's also going to make us revert more to a cash economy. I mean, people in the townships have been used to this for years, where you just don't pay tax, because what you do is you do a deal where it's cash, or you trade this with that person, and then the government have no way to trace it. And that's all they're going to find. If they keep on squeezing, people will find other ways of releasing the pressure. And there's no amount of left-wing central planning that can ever result in a positive thing here. I just want to ask you guys about something else that's related to this. The average take-home pay in South Africa at the start of 2022, do you know how much it is? Average nominal take-home pay.
No, I don't.
I don't know.
Well, this is among people, obviously, who are employed. So we can discount some half of our country, sadly, in all of this. But the average recorded nominal take-home pay, which now sits at 15,542 Rand per month, obviously, that's up 7% from November 2021. So it's gone up, it's jumped up quite a lot. But real take-home pay is at 12,463 Rand. So year on year, in nominal terms, they say it remains unchanged. In real terms, South African workers are poorer than they were a year ago, with take-home pay declining by 5.2%. So lots of interesting things coming out.
Absolutely. And the talk about increasing personal tax and VAT means that money will contract even further. And the reason we're poorer today is because of our services, our social services also not working, is you're paying for a medical aid because the hospitals aren't working. You're paying for private security because the police aren't working. You have to pay for a car because the public transport system's not working. So all of those things are what burdens the taxpayer, are what burdens the everyday South Africans who are earning an income.
I lived in Britain in the 70s, where we had a Labour government, and they had a line on soaking the rich, and I just get that sense of deja vu here now. God knows I'm not rich. I've had to sell 2 of my stretch limos, just the 2. Sorry, I'm having this moment of fantasy. Excuse me. But at the moment, I have an address. I don't want to talk about postboxes, but I have an address so that they can get at me. I need electricity so they can get at me and cut it off. And they're going to put that electricity up another 20% and another 20%. And that is because the fat cats running it are paying themselves huge salaries. And it's just hugely inefficient. We used to be the power in the region that exported electricity and managed to attract investment because of our well-priced electricity. Now we can't even provide it to ourselves because it has been so mismanaged and so corrupted. But the thing is, they will keep coming at me because I have to pay in order to keep my standards going. Now, the thing is, as long as they do that, I'll have to survive here. But I couldn't recommend to anyone, and when we talk about our investment, foreign investment or direct foreign investment, is absolutely vital for our survival. We cannot grow this economy, we as South Africans alone, fast enough and large enough to maintain the social services that we have to provide. We need investors. But with what is happening, the mismanagement, the corruption, which has become endemic, we can't attract those investors. So I'm in a very depressed state.
And I think what is particularly galling is to see the report after report that comes out that keeps telling us the things that we know. So a day or so ago, the SIU report on the PPE investigations came out, right? So you get this report, comes out, and you look at those infographics. I couldn't even read the report, and it's my favorite thing. I just looked at the infographics, and they were enough to kind of make me wonder, because you're just like these guys. And at the same time, coupled with the news announcements of even more billions coming into the coffers from the World Bank. So again, that is money that we are going to have to pay back because it's not a grant, it's a loan. And then to see that it's squandered, it really makes you think we've got to vote differently, guys.
At least they're spending it on the right things. For example, here's a good story for today. South Africa's mega licensed card printing machine is back. Fikile Mbalula told us the other day, and in fact, I was meant to go for my car license renewal because it's now already been expired for over a year. And, they're not going to forgive me forever. But it's not my fault because I have been trying. And apparently the card machine, the one that we had one machine. I'm going to say it again because it sounds ridiculous. We've got millions of people who have cars in this country, millions of them who are driving around illegally like me at the moment because we can't get driver's license cards. There was one machine that was broken. And it took them about 3 months to even realize it was broken. Another 3 months to have it fixed. Well, Fikile Mbalula pulled out all the stops yesterday, bells and whistles, smoke and mirrors, a big stage show because he loves those. It's all about him. He announced that South Africa's driver's license card machine is back. He put out a video on social media of him visiting the driver's license card account, and there they found driver's license cards.
But you know what conversation we're not having, which, and for this, mainstream media, some of the things that they kind of gloss over. And I think, JJ, you talk about how the newsrooms have become diminished. It is totally a consequence of the fact that there are less people in those newsrooms, and there's definitely less gold in the heads of some of the people in the newsroom.
For sure.
Right? As the card machine is broken, and Gareth, you and I are driving around with expired licenses through no fault of our own. If you get into a car accident, do you know what your insurance is going to say to you?
Yeah.
Expired license.
Now, whose fault is it?
And that conversation has not been had, not by anyone. And I think, all of those little things are.
I love the fact that you speak about the mainstream media, Phumi. What is the mainstream media? The newspaper that I worked on once, the Pretoria News, used to sell 40,000 copies when I was there, 40,000. Now they sell 1,600 copies a day. I don't know how they survive. But, the newspaper has now got a smaller circulation than my tweet site. I don't see what, and I mean that's a tragic example. But what was the Star? Once 250,000 down to something like 17,000. There's no such thing as the mainstream media anymore, in my view.
JJ, we still have a vast number of South Africans who rely on radio, for example. The biggest stations are still Ukhozi, Mhlobo Wenene, those kinds of stations. A lot of people, particularly older people, are not as au fait with technology in South African rural areas. They still are dependent on these things.
And there's many people parading themselves as journalists and editors.
Yeah. This is it. It's more that they demand credibility for being legacy media, and that they poo-poo and nonsense the online sites, which frankly are probably doing a better job in every which way. I mean, it's why so many of the reputable people have gone online now, rather than work for television, radio, or newspapers, which frankly they're all hugely compromised. I mean, we know, you mentioned the Pretoria News, part of the IOL group, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we
know exactly what's happened there.
Been bastardized by Iqbal Serve, and we know that every one of the TV channels in South Africa has questionable links to either, this political interest, that political party, these people who are ex-cadres or whatever the case may be, and they all toe a political line. So you've got to take it from whence it comes and not believe everything you're told by those media organizations. But Phumi is referring to, and maybe you do have an opinion on this, is the quality of the journalists and the quality of the reporters, because there are very few of those left at these institutions. They're borrowing credibility from each other at a diminishing rate.
For 8 years, I taught journalists at the Tshwane University of Technology. They wanted to call themselves the Tshwane Institute of Technology, but realized that wouldn't look very good on paper. But I mean, I was quite amazed. I was sort of dragooned into it. I spoke to somebody one day. We were in the Sahara together, and he said that he'd lectured at the Tshwane University. And I said, gosh, that's something. I'd love to put something back into the craft. And he called me 2 weeks after coming home and said, were you serious about that? And I couldn't tell him I wasn't. So I said, yes. He said, well, I've been posted abroad. Could you take my class from next week? And there began a long stint of doing it. I was quite amazed. I mean, I thought that I would be challenged and it would be a very stimulating experience. I'm married to a teacher. So I knew that I could be didactic and bully people, with abandon. But it was a remarkable experience. And to this day, I have a number of my former students. I remember one of them, huge individual, bumped me over with a television camera and said, out of the way, and then looked down at who was lying there and said, sir. They were obliged to call me sir in those days. So I trained journalists, and it was, as I say, a very edifying experience. but I can count on my two hands the number, and that's in 8 years of classes, who came through and amounted to anything. So we have, but I mean, I'm not saying that actually ended up becoming editors, because some of them would not appear on my two hands. They suddenly found themselves, they compromised themselves. They were looked after the right people. And so we're not served by a good media here. And the situation during apartheid was that we did have a proper media that had courage and to fight against an unjust system. Today, I'm sad to say we just don't have the numbers, and not only because of the juniorization of newsrooms and the parlor state of training these journalists, but the fact that everybody with a computer or even a cell phone now sends out information and has become a journalist themselves, have no idea of checking facts, no idea of checking sources. They simply put out information. And here we have somebody like Donald Trump can stand up and talk about fake news, which, God bless him, Richard Nixon was never able to do because he was up against real journalists.
Yeah.
When you have fake journalists, you will get fake news, and the politicians will get away with everything.
Well, Onkhopotse points out here, journalists who find all their stories, they just spend the whole day on Twitter. That's what they do. And then they just republish bullshit that they see on Twitter. That's the main source for many of these supposed, in inverted commas, journalists. And it is a paltry state of affairs. It really is. Guys, one other story, and this really relates also to your area of expertise, JJ. Zimbabwe has warned of threats to its citizens based in South Africa. Phumi, I know this is something you care about too. And it drives me up the wall when we start seeing people fomenting this xenophobic nonsense. And you even saw it the other day with Kenny Kunene and Gayton McKenzie saying that their patriotic alliance will take every single immigrant, and mostly they meant illegal, but I don't think they said it, and deport them back to, in inverted commas, where they come from. This kind of language is incendiary. It reminds me of the sort of stuff that you would hear from the Nazis about the Jews in the 1930s. They don't belong here. Who are they? Even the cockroach stuff that we heard in Rwanda and Burundi during that ugly civil war and that ugly genocide. So your comments on, first of all, what's going on, and also it comes from the ANC too, because they're desperate now. They see themselves in decline. We see a lot of these politicians going for the obvious low-hanging fruit. There's always going to be the racial stuff, but this xenophobic stuff is particularly ugly, pernicious, nefarious, and we see it happening. I mean, even Herman Mashaba, he didn't hold any quota for these illegal immigrants. 50% or so of the economy of Gauteng is powered by immigrants of various stripes, people from all over the world, but also people from Africa. And when Zimbabwe has to issue a warning to its own citizens who are living here, we're doing something very, very wrong. Phumi, you go first.
Nelson Chamisa, is it? MDC leader, had a Twitter space with 3,000 people the other night because of the threats. And I was just, and I remain astounded at the fact that, and I feel like we're going to come full circle back to the AU, astounded at the fact that what we see happening today in South Africa is a direct result of the AU's kind of being complicit with the killing, essentially, of Zimbabwe. And now Zimbabwe is a failed state, and we as the neighbor are picking up slack, and we are failing as a state, and that creates it. And everybody knows this, right? Is when you are under pressure, what tends to happen is you then exert the pressure on the person who has less power than you. And what you're seeing, and what you're seeing is you're seeing South Africans who are frustrated because of economic circumstances, because of lack of access, and that is what they are exerting on foreign nationals in South Africa and predominantly Zimbabweans. And then you get it sanctioned, right? You get it sanctioned by Julius Malema bullying restaurant owners because of who do they have, and kind of flip-flopping about what they're saying. Gayton McKenzie is a blatant criminal. I don't know why he has the kind of microphone that he has in South Africa. All of that is That's why I'm saying it's a full circle, right? Of a failure of African leadership and a failure of African leaders holding each other accountable. And
Absolutely.
it's always the poorest who suffer.
You're not allowed to call it xenophobia, you know. You're supposed to call it something else, criminality. Why can't you call it xenophobia? Well, you know, I've been in this business a long, long time, and certainly the first 2/3 of it were in dealing with apartheid, fighting apartheid. And the fact is, we have now a system, we transformed into a system of government with people that relied on the kindness of strangers. We had to live. We had to send our exiles into countries that to look after them, from our neighboring Botswana all the way up to Algeria and other countries. We all through Africa, we had South Africans reliant on the kindness, certainly of fellow Africans, and then of others in Europe and the Americas. So now to have politicians turn on the very people that once provided us refuge and succor is unacceptable. It embarrasses the ANC government beyond the singing of it. And that's why they won't call it what it is, which is xenophobia. And, you know, I think when you look at any country in trouble, certainly the kind of economic malaise that we have, it's right, as Phumi says, that you have the people turn on those who have less and blame. It's easy to blame losing a job on a foreigner getting it. That's really not the truth. So we don't know. It is a fact. We don't know how many Zimbabweans we have in this country right now. We don't know it because the system hasn't allowed us to count them. The system hasn't been efficient enough to do it. I was covering a Zimbabwe election and then got booted out, you know, and unceremoniously booted out after being held for some time. I went over the border. I was quite exhausted. I went and stayed on a farm just across the border, a sort of bed and breakfast farm. And the farmer took me out the next morning and said, look here, and showed me that something like 2,000 people had come across his farm the night before, having crossed the Limpopo River, waded across, which you can do. And that was just one day. So we don't know how many Zimbabweans there are. And there's no doubt that they do, to some extent, drain the social services that are not enough for the existing South Africans. So that's true. But the fact is, many of them come, and our economy relies on, just as I spoke about, relying on foreign investment. They rely on foreign workers. We don't have enough workers to people this economy when it's working. So, you know, some better system has to be maintained. And I think the government has to face up to the fact that it must fight xenophobia and call it by its name and fight it accordingly.
You know, if you're going to fight xenophobia, if you're going to make public statements, certainly don't make them xenophobic. But this is on us. If we don't have borders that are impermeable, we have no right to complain about the fact that people will migrate across those borders. As far as I can tell, our border posts are mere administrative and usually sites for bribery. They're mere administrative gateways, but most people aren't using them. Most people who can't afford to bribe and pay their way across are just going under fences and over fences and through rivers and doing what they've always done throughout human history. So this fake border that makes us a sovereign nation is a joke, and the government that's meant to be policing it is responsible for that, not the Zimbabweans crossing.
The real criminality that does need to be called out is, where the hell is your president? Where is your Naledi Pandor? Where is your police system? And then when you have your Home Affairs Minister pandering to kind of this populist view of we're coming for you. It's like, what is going on? But that's my one moment today of saying, where is your president, guys?
Yeah, well, there'll be one of those in every show. But JJ, for a Zimbabwean national who's in South Africa, there really isn't any recourse if, you know, someone steals from them in their shack that they've got in Diepsloot, for example. There's no recourse for them if someone comes in there and murders them in the night. You know, we find these stories on the 14th, 15th page of a site. You have to click through about 25 different articles before you get to these about how many people are just, murdered. And because they're foreign nationals, nothing ever happens. There is no way that these people are being treated like people should be treated, especially in a country which says that we respect human rights. We clearly are just the biggest hypocrites in the world.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And when you get a country, I mean, the number of times we've had meetings of African leaders saying, this is terrible, what is happening in South Africa? Well, the cheap argument is, well, why do you have a system that's driving your people to live in our country? Why don't you correct your own system?
Why is the Zimbabwean government? Why is the Zimbabwean government? So when Nelson Chabiso has his 3,000 people space of people in South Africa, Zimbabweans in South Africa, and how they are threatened, great for him. But actually, he is the opposition leader. He should be working hard for his country to be a functioning country so that the people can be back in their hometown. Nobody wants to be living in a cemetery in South Africa because they have nowhere else to live. They want to be home as well, but they have failed the people too.
Oh, absolutely. And, when you look at the issue of Nigeria, well, I mean, you've got to be very careful when you talk about it. But Nigerians who come here, the propensity of them is not, out of economic necessity. It's out of economic wish. They want a better life here, and they think that they can do it and get away with a lot of criminality and so on. This is the kind of story they get from Nigeria. But when
it's not a story,
when they act against them, when we act against them, the Nigerians say, you can't. It's xenophobia against Nigerians. Well, to some extent, that's absolutely true, and I'd say we must call it by its proper name. But the point you make, I think, is the most apposite. If you don't properly protect your borders, then you have to accept that you're going to have real problems, drain on social services, criminality, and other things are going to happen as foreigners flood in.
Yeah, well, I just thought it's worth mentioning because it seems to me that there are also a lot of political voices that are doing exactly the opposite of what they should be doing to help make this situation better. Let's also remember that if you push a population which has swelled to the size that it has of foreign nationals in this country, if you push them to the point where they have to defend themselves, claw and tooth at the barrel of a gun, just for the basic rights to live in a place, to earn a living, they're eventually going to fight back. And there are a lot more of them than there have ever been. Don't expect these people to just be docile forever. If you stoke up the fire, expect a result. And that result might be a very ugly one.
But we also have to accept and understand that this is a complex situation. It's not just a one-sided affair. It's not one thing that if you fix this one thing, if you fix the border, if you fix the fences, if you fix the defense force, you're going to be able to control this. We have to understand that there are a myriad of linked problems that lead us to where we are. And they are on both sides of the fence. They are in South Africa and they are in the country of origin.
Phumi, it's interesting you go straight to the defense force. You don't even go via the police.
No.
Guys, Babazi says, so according to JJ's comments earlier, we owe fellow Africans forever for exile. Every country has a responsibility to employ the workforce they produce. I hate when celebrities and politicians pretend there is no problem in South Africa. Well, I think, Babazi, there's some of that we've already agreed with. And there's some of that which is also, I think, a very good point. How much of this hangover from the apartheid era do we have to keep on carrying the can for? And we've also been supplying free electricity to some of these countries for a very long time. Isn't that a way to pay them back? And aren't we sorted now? Isn't that debt paid? This idea that, because historically the ANC was helped out, that's the best reason for us to be nice to foreigners, seems to miss the point that just because they're people, we should be nice to them, not because they're foreigners.
We have to.
We're our friends once or anything else.
The reality of it, though, is it's an interdependence. All of us here on the continent, we are dependent on each other.
Yes.
For various reasons, including markets. For crying out loud. South Africa is a country of about 60 million people. If as a business, even if as a business you want to grow and be a big business, you want to be able to transact on other countries in other countries on the continent. Hey, the English guys, the bundles are depleting. You want to be able to transact, because that's what it is. We could be, all of us, the whole continent could be that much more prosperous if we were able to keep good governance in each of our countries, but also to be able to trade with each other. Then we all prosper.
Correct.
You're sounding desperately like Cyril Ramaphosa now, Phumi. You know that, eh?
Don't tell her that.
Nice ideas. But, it is so much more complex than that, as you said, too.
Yeah, it's very complex.
I'm sorry we have to call an end to this, and I'm glad I got to vent a little bit about the illegal immigrants, the kinds of predations that they're subjected to daily, because it really drives me crazy. And I do think that we are such hypocrites. We sit and talk about human rights. We want to be on the UN Security Council. We want to be in the AU. We want to talk in all these talk shops. When it comes to actually acting, we just completely disregard our own rules. And it's
also,
do as I say.
We want to have a really nice helper from Zimbabwe, but we don't want Zimbabweans in our country.
Yeah, it's bloody outrageous. Anyway, JJ, it's always great to have you on the show, and thank you for your time today. I'm sorry that we didn't get to speak to Sihle. Apparently, he had load shedding in his area. Ironic that we should have spoken about that earlier too. But JJ, terrific that we got to have you, and we got to speak to you for as long as we did this morning. It was really absolutely terrific, as it always is. And your insights on Africa and the various interplays between these countries, the things that are going on the continent, the big news stories, invaluable. So great to have you.
Guys, we didn't even talk about AFCON. Love you, JJ. It was wonderful having you.
Lovely to be with you.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you, Phumi. And we will be back with the Burning Platform next week, same time, same place. Have a good day. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.